Part 1. Once upon a time, there was a poor woodman. He lived in a small cottage in the forest. Every evening he sat by the fire smoking his pipe. His wife sat near him, spinning wool. The fire was warm, but the house felt very quiet. One night the woodman looked at his wife and said slowly with a sigh, "How lonely it is, dear wife, just the two of us, sitting here alone. No children to play around us, no little voices in the house. Other people have children and they seem so happy, so full of life. But we have nobody." His wife stopped her spinning. She looked into the fire and sighed too. "You are right," she said softly. "I think about it every day. How happy I would be if only I had one child, just one, even if it were very, very small. Even if it were no bigger than my thumb, I would love it with all my heart." Now this is a very strange story. But what happened next was stranger still. Not long after that night, the woman's wish came true. She had a baby boy. The baby was healthy. The baby was strong, but he was no bigger than a thumb. Yes, a real living boy the size of a thumb. The woodman and his wife looked at their tiny son. They smiled at each other. "Well," said the woodman, "we asked for a child and we got one. He is very small, but we will love him with all our hearts." And they named him Thomas Thumb, or just Tom. They gave Tom plenty of food. They gave him care and warmth, but no matter how much he ate, he never grew bigger. He stayed exactly the same size as the day he was born, the size of a thumb. But Tom had bright, sharp eyes, and he had a very clever mind. He always knew what was happening around him, and he always had a plan. One morning, the woodman was getting ready to go to the forest. He needed to cut wood. He looked at his cart and then he frowned. "I wish someone could take the cart to the forest for me," he said. "I need to go quickly, but someone must lead the horse." Then a tiny voice spoke up loud and confident. "Father, I will do it. Do not worry, the cart will be there when you need it." The woodman laughed. He looked down at little Tom and shook his head. "Tom, you cannot even reach the horse's nose. How will you lead him?" Tom smiled. "Easy, Father. Ask Mother to put the horse in the harness, then put me inside the horse's ear. I will sit there and I will tell him which way to go." The woodman laughed again, but he thought, why not try? So the mother harnessed the horse to the cart. Then she picked up Tiny Tom carefully and placed him inside the horse's ear, and off they went. Tom sat in the warm darkness of the horse's ear. He could see nothing, but he called out directions clearly. "Go on," he said, and the horse moved forward. Turn left, and the horse turned. Gently, gently, and the horse slowed down. The horse listened perfectly, just as if a real driver were sitting on the cart. Now on that same road, two strangers were walking. They stopped when they saw the horse and cart coming toward them. There was no one on the cart, no one walking beside it, but they could clearly hear a voice giving orders to the horse. The first stranger grabbed the arm of the second. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. "There is a voice, but I see nobody. The cart is moving, the horse is obeying, but who is driving?" "I hear it too," said the second man. His eyes were wide. "Let us follow the cart and find out." So the two strangers followed the cart all the way into the forest until they reached the woodman, and just at that moment, Tom's tiny voice called out from inside the horse's ear, "Father, Father, I am here. I brought the cart safe and sound. Now please take me down." The woodman smiled. He reached up to the horse's ear and gently lifted out his tiny son. He put Tom down on a piece of straw, and Tom sat there, happy as a king on his throne. The two strangers watched all of this with their mouths open. They could not believe what they had just seen. Finally, one of them pulled the other aside and whispered quickly, "Did you see that? A tiny little man. He drove the horse all by himself. If we could take him with us and show him to people in the towns, we could make a fortune. People would pay to see him." The other man nodded eagerly. "Yes, let us buy him from the woodman. The father will agree for the right price." They walked up to the woodman and spoke politely. "Sir," said the first stranger, "that little fellow of yours, he is remarkable. We would like to take him with us. He will have a good life with us. We will take care of him, and we will pay you well." The woodman shook his head immediately. "No, he is my son, my own flesh and blood. I would not sell him for all the gold in the world." But Tiny Tom had been listening to every word. He climbed quickly up his father's coat all the way to the shoulder and whispered into his father's ear, "Father, take the money. Let them have me. Do not worry. I promise I will come back to you soon." The woodman hesitated. He did not like the idea at all, but Tom whispered again, calm and sure, "Trust me, father. I know what I am doing." So at last the woodman agreed. The strangers paid him a large piece of gold, and they took Tom with them. The woodman watched them go and hoped with all his heart that his clever little son was right. Part 2. As they walked down the road, one of the strangers looked down at little Tom in his hand and said, "So, little fellow, where would you like to ride? On my shoulder? In my pocket?" Tom looked up at the man's hat and pointed. "Put me on the brim of your hat," he he said. "It will be like a balcony for me. I can walk around up there and see the whole countryside as we travel." The men laughed. They thought it was a fine idea. So Tom sat high up on the hat brim, watching the fields and trees go by like a tiny captain on a ship. But as evening came and the sky grew dark, Tom began to feel tired, and more importantly, he began to make his plan. "Please," he called down, "I need to get down for a moment. I am tired." The man took off his hat and set Tom down carefully on a clump of dirt at the edge of a ploughed field. And the moment Tom's tiny feet touched the ground, he ran. He ran between the big clumps of earth, darting left, right, jumping over small stones. And then he found exactly what he needed. An old mouse hole, a small dark tunnel going down into the earth. Tom dived straight in. "Good night, gentlemen," he called back cheerfully. "Mind how you look for me next time." The two strangers ran to the hole immediately. They pushed their sticks into it, poking around, searching. But Tom just crawled deeper and deeper into the dark tunnel. After a while, the night became very black, and the two men finally gave up. They walked away angry and embarrassed, with empty hands. When all was quiet, Tom crawled back out of the mouse hole. He looked around at the dark ploughed field and shook his head. "This is very dangerous walking," he said to himself. "If I fall off one of these big clumps of dirt, it will be like falling off a cliff for someone my size. I could break my neck." He walked carefully, slowly through the field. And then, good luck! He found a large empty snail shell on the ground. It was smooth and curved and just the right size. "Perfect!" said Tom with a smile. "I can sleep here very nicely." He crawled inside and made himself comfortable. But just as he was falling asleep, he heard voices nearby. Two men walking quietly along the road, speaking in low voices. "So," said one, "how shall we do it? How can we get into the rich parson's house and take his silver and gold?" Tom's eyes opened wide. "Thieves!" he thought for a moment, and then he called out in a clear voice from inside the shell, "I can help you. I know exactly how to do it." The two thieves jumped with fright. "What was that?" whispered the first one. "I heard a voice, but I see no one." "Listen," said the second. "Listen carefully." Tom called out again. "Look on the ground near you. The sound is coming from here." The thieves looked and looked until at last they found the tiny voice inside the snail shell. They picked it up carefully and looked at Tom with wide eyes. "You little thing," said one thief, almost laughing. "What could you possibly do for us?" Tom looked up at them calmly. "I can get through the iron bars on the parson's window," he said. "I am small enough. I will go inside and I will throw out whatever you want: gold, Silver, you tell me." The thieves looked at each other. They nodded slowly. "Not bad," said one. "Not bad at all. Come along with us, little man." They arrived at the parson's house. It was dark and quiet. The thieves stood outside, waiting nervously, while Tom slipped easily between the iron bars of the window and dropped down silently into the room. Inside, Tom looked around. Then, instead of working quietly, he filled his lungs and shouted at the top of his voice, "What would you like? Do you want everything?" Outside, the thieves nearly fell over with shock. One grabbed the other's arm. "Quiet," he hissed. "Be quiet. You will wake everyone in the house." But Tom shouted again, even louder. "How much do you want? Shall I throw it all out?" In the next room, the cook was sleeping. She sat up in bed listening. Her heart was beating fast. The thieves outside ran a few steps away in panic. But then they stopped. They looked at each other. "The little fool," muttered one. "He is just playing tricks on us. Come on, let us go back and tell him to be quiet." They crept back to the window and whispered sharply, "Stop this nonsense. Just throw us the money and be quiet about it." Tom put his hands to his mouth and shouted louder than ever, "Very well. Hold your hands. Here it comes." That was enough. The cook leaped out of bed and ran to the door, calling for help. The two thieves disappeared into the night, running as fast as if a wolf were chasing them. The cook searched the whole room, but found no one. She went to get a candle, and while she was gone, Tom slipped out of the window, crossed the yard, and climbed up into the barn. He burrowed deep into the soft hay of the hayloft and lay down exhausted. "What a night," he said with a yawn, and he fell fast asleep. Part 3. Tom slept deeply and peacefully in the hay. His plan was simple: sleep until morning, then find his way home to father and mother. It was a good plan, but life does not always follow our plans. Before sunrise, the cook got up early to feed the cows. She walked straight to the hayloft. Without looking, without thinking, she grabbed a huge armful of hay, and in the middle of that hay was Tom, still sleeping, still dreaming. She carried the whole bundle to the cow and pushed it into the feeding rack. The cow opened her great mouth and took a huge mouthful of hay, with Tom inside it. Tom woke up suddenly in darkness, surrounded by huge moving teeth. "What? Where am I?" he cried. Then he realized with horror exactly where he was. "I am inside a cow," he said. "This is very unpleasant." But Tom did not panic. He moved carefully, climbing and twisting, making sure he stayed away from those enormous teeth, and finally he slid down into the cow's stomach. It was very dark in there, and wet, and the ceiling kept getting lower as more and more hay fell in from above. "Well," said Tom, trying to stay cheerful, "they forgot to put windows in this room, and a candle would be very useful right now." But it was getting worse. More hay kept coming less and less space. "Stop bringing! Hay!" Tom shouted as loudly as he could. "No more hay, please!" At that very moment, the milkmaid was sitting next to the cow, milking her quietly. Then she heard a voice coming from inside the cow. "Stop bringing hay." The milkmaid screamed. She fell off her stool. The milk pail crashed to the floor. She scrambled up, covered in mud and milk, and ran as fast as she could to find her master, the parson. "Sir, sir," she cried, "the cow is talking. I heard it, a voice coming from inside the cow." The parson looked at her with tired eyes. "Woman," he said slowly, "you are dreaming." But the milkmaid was shaking. So the parson sighed and followed her to the cowshed. They had barely stepped through the door when Tom shouted again from inside the cow, "No more hay. I do not want any more hay." The parson went pale. He stared at the cow. He took one step back, then another. "This animal," he said in a low, frightened voice, "is bewitched." He turned to his farmhand and said, "Kill the cow at once." And so the poor cow was killed. And when they cut her open, they threw the stomach out onto the dunghill outside. Tom quickly started to work his way out. It was difficult, but slowly he made a small hole and pushed his head out into the fresh air. Freedom! He took a deep breath. And at that exact moment, a hungry wolf appeared from the trees. He saw the stomach lying on the ground and in one enormous gulp swallowed it whole. With Tom still inside it, Tom found himself sliding down into the wolf's stomach. He sat there in the dark for a moment. "Again," he said quietly. "Really?" But Tom was not a person who gave up easily. He thought fast. Then he called out in a friendly voice, "Hello there, Mr. Wolf. Can you hear me?" The wolf stopped walking, surprised. "Who is that?" he growled. "It is me inside your stomach," said Tom cheerfully. "Now listen. I know where you can find the most amazing food, a real feast. Would you like to hear about it?" "Go on," said the wolf slowly. "My father's house," said Tom, "not far from here. There is a drain pipe. You can crawl right through it into the kitchen, and from the kitchen you can get into the pantry. And in that pantry, Mr. Wolf, there is ham and roast beef and cold chicken and cakes and apple dumplings and, oh, everything you could possibly want." The wolf did not need to think twice. That very night he found the woodman's house. He crawled through the drain pipe into the kitchen, then squeezed into the pantry. And there, just as Tom had promised, there was food everywhere. The wolf ate and ate and ate. He ate until his stomach was full to bursting. Then he turned to leave and realized he could not fit back through the drain pipe. He was simply too full, too big. He was stuck. This was exactly what Tom had planned. And now Tom began to make noise. He sang. He shouted. He banged on the inside of the wolf's stomach. He yelled as loud as he could. The wolf hissed at him desperately. "Stop! Be quiet! You will wake everyone!" "Why should I stop?" said Tom cheerfully. "You had your fun. Now it is my turn to be merry." And he sang louder and shouted louder and made even more noise. Upstairs in the cottage, the woodman and his wife woke up suddenly. They heard strange sounds, howling, banging, a small, high voice coming from the kitchen. They crept to the door and peeped through a crack. A wolf in their kitchen. They looked at each other in fear. Then the woodman moved fast. He grabbed his axe. He handed his wife a scythe. "Stay back," he whispered. "I will hit the wolf on the head. When he falls, you cut him open. Ready?" His wife nodded, gripping the scythe. Then from inside the wolf, they heard a tiny but very familiar voice. "Father, Father, it is me, Tom. I am inside the wolf. Do not hurt me." The woodman froze. His wife burst into tears. "Tom," the woodman whispered, "Tom is alive. He is inside the wolf." "Do not use the scythe," he told his wife quickly. "Be careful, Tom is in there." He raised the axe and struck the wolf hard on the head. One great blow, and the wolf fell dead on the floor. Then very carefully they cut open the wolf, and out stepped Tom Thumb, small and muddy and tired, but alive and smiling. The woodman picked up his tiny son and held him gently in the palm of his hand. His eyes were bright with tears. "Tom, we thought we had lost you forever. We were so afraid." "I know, Father," said Tom quietly. "I am sorry to have worried you, but I am here, I am safe, and I am very, very happy to breathe fresh air again." His mother was already wiping her eyes and running to find food, for Tom had not eaten properly for a very long time. "Tell us," said the father, sitting down by the fire. "Where have you been? What happened to you?" Tom took a deep breath and smiled. "Well, Father, I was inside a mouse hole, then inside a snail shell, then inside a cow's stomach, and then inside a wolf's stomach. But here I am." His parents looked at him in silence for a moment. Then they both laughed and held him close. "You are home," said his mother softly. "That is all that matters." They gave Tom a warm bath. They made him new clothes, for his old ones were quite ruined. They gave him hot soup and fresh bread and everything he loved. And Tom sat by the fire, warm and safe and full, while his parents sat on either side of him. And the woodman said quietly, "We will never sell you again, Tom, not for all the riches in the world." "And I," said Tom, stretching out his tiny arms, "will never leave home without planning my return very carefully." They all laughed at that, and the fire burned warm, and the little cottage was full of the sound of voices and laughter. Because Tom Thumb had travelled far through mouse holes and stomachs and dark forests and dangerous nights, he had been clever, he had been brave, he had always found a way. But in the end, like any good traveller, he came home. And home was the best place of all. The end.
Подпишись, пожалуйста, или хотя бы поставь лайк. Один лайк не меняет мир, но меняет путь того, кто делится смыслом.